Welcome to this tutorial on user login and sessions. This tutorial will give a few aspects of PHP that will focus on how an HTML form can be submitted and how to check for username and password. The entered values will be checked against a database. I'll show you how to set up a database with your username and password, how to connect to a database, and also to process a logout function. Since we're using sessions, the user will remain logged in until they press the logout button. To start with, I'll create an HTML form. I'll take you through some of the MySQL features that we will set up. In our HTML form, we have the action going to a page called login.php. We'll keep separate pages to keep it simple. Our method is going to be post. So let's end our form here. I'll start creating our input type, which will be text, and the name will be username. A line break here. Copy paste this line and change text to password. And it's called password. Depending on which operating system we are using, this will appear as stars or circles. And finally, we'll create a submit button and its value will be login. Let's try this. Refresh and we have a page here. Index.php with a username and password. I'll log in and it goes to a page that doesn't exist. Now let's make it a bit more user-friendly and type out labels here. Refresh and there we are. Now let us create a login.php file. First I'll open PHP-MyAdmin. If you are using XAMPP, then it will be installed by default using the local host for my PHP-MyAdmin. If it isn't installed yet, I would suggest you Google it and install a copy on the local host directory and start using it. Now we'll create a new database. So here, create a new database called PHP login. And click create. We can see it appears here and we can now create tables. In case you're not familiar with SQL, let me brief you. A basic structure is a database which stores tables, tables store rows, and row store values. Let's name it users and click on OK. An error, the number of fields. When I create a new database, I open up a notepad and note down all the fields that I'll use. I'll use ID for start, next username, and lastly password. That's all we want at the moment. We can also add the first name, date of birth, etc. depending on your program. But for now we're using these 3 fields, making it a total of 3 fields. Let's go back here. So 3 fields and that will create that first. Now we proceed with typing in the field names. We type ID and we will make this an integer. This is the primary key and we want it to make auto increment. Now every time a new record is created, the ID values will increment by 1. So for example, the first user who registers will have an ID of 1. The second user who registers will have an ID of 2 and so on and so forth. Okay, next one will be the username and the last one is going to be the password. Next we'll set them as varchars and I'll set this as 25 characters and the password as 25 characters as well. There's nothing else that we need to set for these. Let us scroll down and let's click on save. Okay, so once I save here, we can come down and see this here. And you can insert values in them. We'll do it because we're testing. I've created some tutorials on how to make a user register form. We can discuss this further there. the value of ID will be auto incremented, so we don't have to put anything. It's 1 straight away. In username, I'll say Alex. My password will be ABC. I would recommend you a better password though. Okay, so username is Alex and password is ABC. Easy to remember. That's what has been stored. To browse, just click the Browse tab. Let's scroll down. We have username and password as Alex and ABC, and the ID had already been set to 1. Now we'll create the login.php page. Let's save this quickly. Login.php. Let us see how to create our PHP tabs. I'll take into account some post variables now. In index.php, we use the method as post. We'll set username as $_post and rename the variable which is username. It is found here and password will be equal a post value and that will be password. First of all, we will check whether both the username and the password were entered. We won't start validating the form. It's unnecessary to do so since we know the user has entered both these fields. Now I will type my if statement. This will be a big block because all the code that I require after I check this will go in here. So here I'll say if username, which means if username has a value, it will return true and I'll say password. So this requires the username and password for this to be true and to execute this block of code here. What should we write here? We need to connect to a database. To do this, we create a variable called connect equal to mysql_connect. And inside this, the first parameter will be a host, which is localhost for me. The second one will be username and I'll use root. The third one is the password, which I believe I don't have. We'll check on that. After this, we can say or die and give an error message. So for example, we can say couldn't connect. I'm not sure about my password. I think it's something else. We'll try something then. It'll say couldn't connect. Now we need to select a database. We'll say mysql select db, which is another built-in function when you have the PHP module installed. It also comes with XAMPP. Here I'll put a double quote and say PHP login. So assuming that everything is okay, I can add my error message here. Couldn't find DB. Okay. Refresh page. Click login, nothing happened. Let's edit our if statement and say else echo, or instead the best function is die. Here it will just stop executing anything after this point, after this function is called, and it will also pass a message of your choice. So here I'll say please enter username and a password. Refresh this, resend the data and we get this error message. Next I'll type Alex and 123, ABC and click login. No error message, which means we are connected to the database. That's the end of this part. In the next one, I will show how to connect to our database and check for the username and password. Thanks for joining us. This is Ivan Verki, dubbing for the Spoken Tutorial project. Bye bye.